Ladies and gentlemen, monsters and maniacs, my name is the Pumpkin Queen, and I want to welcome you all to my castle tonight. Or well, the castle gardens actually. I put up a little fireplace so we can all get cozy while we're here. And I want to wish you all a very happy Spooktober month. And a very happy Halloween while we're at it. And because of the October month, I have a very special story in store for you tonight. So, let's get into it, shall we? The Redhill. The day was unseasonably warm for Avon, Maine. My brother Zack and I had been working all day getting the lawn cut and chores done, so we could help Serena with the pool shed off the side of the house. We all had a love for Halloween and wanted to do something great this year, so we decided to turn the shed into a haunted house. Plastic skeletons and paper ghosts littered the outside, along with a sign that proclaimed, "Trespassers will be eaten." Unfortunately, as fun as the theme was, it was also true. We took an extra precaution and double-chained the bulk of head doors to the cellar. But we couldn't be reasonable for those who got lost. It's pretty unlikely that it would happen, but Captain Bubbles would eat the children in a heartbeat. To his credit though, the added effect of having an actual ghoul bang on the doors from below would be a bonus. Even Uncle Bob was getting into the spirit. As much as a ghost, I can suppose. He had been walking around, talking about back in the day when kids didn't need parents to go trick-or-treating, and how most of the treats used to be homemade. Nobody worried about being poisoned or stabbed with razor blades when biting into a red delicious. It's pretty cool to hear about those things what used to be. When a horse and a bed sheet was a popular costume, then I started to get concerned about beer supply. I can't tell you for sure, but I think the fact that it's Halloween makes his form more solid. He almost looks like he did when he was alive, and he isn't floating around all over the place. He also isn't leaving a trail of beer on the ground everywhere he goes. I could be wrong, but he might even be a little drunk. Something to do with the vial of the dead. Finally, we were close to being finished. Kids would come in, and Zack would jump out dressed as a roast turkey and scare them. They could get some punch and candy and be on their way out the back door. Serena was dressed as a witch, donning a purple hat and entirely too much glitter, and was tasked with handing out the treats. I would be the one to lead them out. My costume was the best, by the way. I was dressed as Edgar Allan Poe. Twice, Zack asked why I was dressed as Gomez Adams, so I learned to ignore it. Serena went back outside to check on the decorations one last time, and I got a great idea. I went over to the side of the woodpile and hurried over Zack and Uncle Bob. Alright, when she comes back in, don't make any noise. On my signal, we all jump out and scare the hell out of her. Sounds good, man. I haven't heard a scream since we were kids. I threw that spider in her hair, laughed Zack. I think she was the one who threw the spider in your hair. And that was also you screaming, chuckled Bob. Before Zack had a chance to defend himself, the door opened again and shushed them both. I think I see people. Then stopped, seeing the shed was empty. She began walking around with a confused look on her face. And when she came close, I silently counted off my head. 1, 2, 3 was all I could get out. The ground beneath us quickly opened up, pulling the three of us down with it. We landed on a soft dirt and shallow pool of water, thankfully, and Serena began to call out. "Don't come near it," I yelled. "You could end up falling in it too. Just go get help from the fire department," I yelled up. "But they won't come here anymore since Zack burned down the family of scarecrows for fun," she replied. "Oh damn, that's right. Police are out. I guess maybe a ambulance? Fuck it. Go get Melvin and Sheena," I yelled back. "Alright, I'll be back soon. Hang on, you guys," she yelled. The sound of chains rustled, and the cellar door slammed hard. Serena screamed for a moment, then was silent once more. "The ghoul of yours sure is priceless," said Uncle Bob. "Bob, why are you still down here? Can't you fly?" asked Zack. "Normally, but I think I'm too full of beer. I ain't felt this alive since I died." "Zack, your arm!" I said, looking over in horror. It was snapped between my wrist and elbow, and the bone was sticking clean through, dangling loose by skin. In a grotesque show, he pulled it off. Meat and skin snapping apart like rubber band, and then tossed it aside. "What the hell, man? What did you just do?" "Oh, relax. None of this is canon," he chuckled, pushing his real arm through the sleeve. "Alright, well, we're in a sinkhole. What do you guys think we should do?" I asked. "It's Halloween. There's only one thing we can do. Ghost stories," said Bob, nodding matter-of-factly. So we huddled together in a circle, sitting in the soggy water, and Zack began to speak. "Alright, I got one that will really knock your socks off. I call it the Circle of Death." Zack opened his eyes. The room was blurred, and the light coming through the windows was blinding. He fumbled around the table for his lighter. Nothing like the morning pre-roll to shake the cobwebs off. He claimed his prize and pulled a slightly crumpled joint from his shirt pocket. After sparking it up and taking a few deep puffs, he began to look around the room. "What the hell happened here? Hey, Matt? Maddie?" The room was completely disarray. Photos knocked from the wall, chairs splintered and thrown about. Definite sign of struggle had taken place. No answer from Matt. Zack decided to check for himself upstairs. Oh shit. A huge pool of blood laid on the foot of the stairs. How many people had contributed to this lake? There was no choice but to walk through it. Crimson footprints marked each step going up. He wasn't the first to come through here. He raced up the stairs and over to Matt's door, slamming his massive frame onto it. He tore through it like construction paper. There was no resistance whatsoever, and he nearly crashed into the opposite wall. Matt and Serena were startled awake. "What the hell, Zack? You're fixing that door. You're right? Thank sweet baby Jesus. I thought you guys were goners. And the door was like that when I got here. And also, the door's not the only problem." Serena yawned loudly and spoke up. "Slow down, little buddy. What do you mean, not the only problem? There's a puddle of blood at the bottom of the stairs, big enough to swim in. I think we gotta get out of here, guys. Slow down, Zack. Let's go check it out. Can you give us 1 minute? Hell no, man. I'm not going out there alone. You ever seen those movies? Fine, whatever. Just close your eyes, would ya? Matt gave a nod to Serena and Zack and closed his eyes. They both got up, got dressed as quickly as they could. Alright, bro, you're good. Alright, let's get out of here. The three of them emerged from the room. Zack, being the largest, led the pack. Coast is clear, guys. Let's head. They hastily crept down the hallway and reached the top of the stairs. Holy shit, you weren't kidding. Surprised the ducks haven't moved in, said Serena. There's someone or something that's probably gonna kill us if we find this. And you're talking about ducks? Really nice, Serena. Real nice. Ladies first. Serena giggled as she buzzed past the brothers and made her way down the stairs. Zack and Matt stared dazed for a moment before making their way down. Serena reached the bottom and turned up to say something to them. Her words never made their mark, however. Blood erupted from her neck, and her head was pulled back. An invisible blade carved back and forth as her head was jerked around violently. After a few gruesome moments, the blade cut clean through the spine, and her body fell limp. The head was suspended in mid-air, raining blood down as it fed the already swollen puddle. Zack and Matt turned and ran back upstairs. Uncle Bob's room seemed like the best option. It also had the only escape on the second floor. They stormed into his room and slammed the door shut behind them. Zack began stacking furniture in the front of the door, as Matt looked around for something, anything to defend themselves with. He approached the door that randomly led outside, and was puzzled by what he saw. There, in the door, were dozens of tally marks, 69 to be exact, all scratched into the wood. Zack? What is happening? Serena, she's dead, Zack! What the fuck is happening? His heart pumped loudly in his ears. Zack? Matt turned to look at his brother. Zack stood with his shoulder pressed against the dresser he had dragged in the front of the door. A fog rolled off his body, much like dry ice. Matt got closer and felt a warmth drained from his face. Zack was covered in ice, an expression of fear struck frozen on his face. An eerie creak began from the door. Matt began taking steps back. 1 step, 2 steps. The creaking grew louder. 3 steps. Then, bang! The door, a makeshift barricade, along with his brother, shattered into a million icy shards. Matt backed up against the door, leading to the roof, tears stinging the spots on his cheeks from where the ice had cut into him. As the ice settled, he could make out a figure looking in the doorway. It was almost human, but distorted and way too large. It slowly crept forward. Matt shook with fear. He felt for the doorknob and tried to make his escape, but it wasn't there. He turned to look for it, but it was as if it never been there at all. He turned back to face the creature. It was closer now. Less than a moment at his rate, for some odd reason, as all felt so familiar. The fear gradually evaporated, leaving another feeling in this place. Déjà vu. With each step the creature took, it became more and more clear. This had all happened before. And would it all happen again? Matt retrieved his pocket knife and opened it, He turned to face the door once more and etched a line the last 4 marks. Guess this makes 70. He felt a long claw hand on his shoulder and hot breath on his neck. He closed his eyes and placed the knife back in his pocket. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Zack finished his story, and we could all hear the sound of something being scraped in the distance. "Serena?" Zack yelled. There was no reply. The scratching continued, but we just resumed our stories. "This was actually pretty good, Zack," I admitted. "Thanks. I used that time I almost died in the old folk home as inspiration. Evil place. Well, I've been telling you kids history and all. I suppose one more story couldn't hurt. I don't really got a name for it. Most folks don't give titles to the stories back then, but I guess you could call it The Gathering of the Dead. It's been pretty quiet here for the past few years. The house was built in 1820, and many generations had come and gone. In old times, people didn't leave home much, so most died at home and were buried nearby. Oftentimes, the grave markers were forgotten or lost track of over time. Who knows how many souls you disturb by just mowing the lawn. I have met up with probably a dozen spirits here. I guess they don't know the scope of what happened to them. Halloween seems to be active time for the spirits. They all come out once, so you get a variety of activity. A few years back, I was watching the news and heard a baby crying upstairs. I knew there were no living people or animals in the house, but I had to get to take a look. I found nothing there, but heard a ruckus downstairs. Came down and the kitchen table had been moved to the center of the room. Spare leaf had been put in the center to make it bigger, and every chair and stool in the house were gathered around it. Even my damn recliner. I decided that if they were going to have a gathering, probably I ought to go out of town for the night and let them have at it. It was nearly 7 on a Friday night, so the local bar was starting to get a crowd. Mind you, it's a small town, so a crowd consists of 20 people. The entertainment was just a pool table, some drunk characters, a jukebox, and later on some of the drunks trying to sing karaoke. I'm pretty quiet, so I just got a pitcher of beer and took an empty booth on my side. Many times I went to kick ass in pool tournaments, but tonight there was just a bunch of young punks playing. They didn't even know what's the end of the table to break from. After half my pitch was gone, an old friend, Aileen, came in. She got herself a ginger ale at the bar and came back to sit down in my booth. "What brings you down off the hill?" she asked. I proceeded to tell her about what happened at the house. She was quite interested, cause she had messed around with the spirit world for quite some time. Rumors had long circulated in the town that she was a witch. We had dated when we were younger, few good times in the shack, but never really went beyond that. She wanted to come back to my house with me, in hopes of meeting some ghosts. I finished my pitcher and we went to my car. Drinking and driving wasn't a big thing back then. Cops were only involved when things went bad. Other than that, you were responsible for your own actions, and no one else butted into your business. I sure do miss those times. Once a few friends and I slowly rolled in my van into someone's backyard, in town besides the cemetery. We fired beer cans into the bushes, and 3 friends took off foot. The county sheriff deputy eventually came, didn't even get out of his car. He shined a spotlight on the upside down van, asked if anyone got hurt, I said, "Get it out of there, boys." He walked the 5 miles home. The other day we went back with my brother in his Impala, pushed the van upright by hand and dragged it home with his car. Eileen and I got back to the house. There was a glow coming from the kitchen windows. I know that I haven't left anything turned on. I unlocked the front door and went inside. The chairs were still around the table with a faint glow in each one. There was a low humming sound, like they were all chanting together slowly. I reached for the light switch beside the door, but nothing happened when I flicked it on. By now, Eileen had gone over and knelt beside the recliner to listen to the low chant. I decided to go back to the car and get my flashlight. When I returned, Eileen met me outside the door. "It's kinda weird," she said. "It's like they are having a seance to keep the living out of the house." "Well, they better learn that it is my house now," I said. I went to the bulkhead in the shed and the door into the cellar. Sure enough, the main had the power switched off in the panel. I turned it back on and heard quite a commotion on the floor above. I went back out the front and saw the kitchen light was now on. Eileen and I went back inside and were surprised that the tables and chairs were all back in their places, and the spare leaf was out of the table. Eileen talked me into having our own little seance. I agreed on one condition, but that I could have a beer at the same time. She lit a couple of candles and turned off the lights, and proceeded to do her own low chants. About 10 minutes, she was finished up with a coffee cup, fell out of the cupboard and smashed on the floor. She said that the spirits were trying one last attempt to scare us off. She finished her last chant and blew out the candles. I turned the light back on, and she said that the spirits shouldn't bother too much anymore, but there might be a stray one now and then. She said had one last chance to protect me. So I said okay. "Spirits of the house, let this man be, I command you. This promise keep for all this time, let him sleep." I said, "Well then, sleep sounds like a good idea." She agreed and asked if she could crash on the couch. I said of course, and the night was quiet after that. There hasn't been much spirit activity here since that night. When he was done speaking, Zack and I slowly looked over to each other. Our eyes were wide, and we locked sight. "Ah!" we both screamed, hugging each other in mock show of terror. I hate to say this, but that was about as lame as a soggy toast, Uncle Bob, Zack said. "Yeah, I mean, it was good, but it wasn't scary," I said. Just as the words left my lips, we could hear things being rapidly moved, like people talking and laughing, and I swear I could hear a baby crying. "Oh, don't mind them, they're just having their usual get-together. You go ahead and tell your spooky tale, Matt," he said with a chuckle. "Alright, well, I guess it's my turn now. I call it Frankenzack." Everything was all grainy, and in black and white, as color hadn't been invented yet. Not a single soul, living or dead, could be heard. Only the sound of a shovel scraping into the dirt. Again and again. "Damn it, bro, why do you have to try and teach that Mussel Ramish Spanish?" Matt hissed to himself. He continued to dig until he hit a casket. Brushing the dirt aside, he lifted a heavy, 3-foot coffin out of the hole and onto the grass above, letting out a sigh. He climbed out and brought it over to a truck, tossing it unsimultaneously in the bed. With that, he left, and went back to the house. After lugging the coffin up the stairs and onto the roof of the pool shed outside Uncle Bob's room, Matt kicked off the top, revealing a small figure inside. It was a great thing the circus was in town that week. Being such a small population, deaths were scarce and fresh bodies were hard to come by. It was by a stroke of luck that a lion went feral that day. The lion tamer whipped the creature one too many times, and the clown who stood near had his legs ripped off to shreds. It was unfortunate that it's also midget, but beggars can be choosers. He glanced over to Zack's body once before cutting open the little man's skull. Matt tugged the brain out, making a wet pop as the stem detached, then tossing it aside, taking Zack's brain and shoved it inside, then closed it up. The legs were a real problem, so he decided to swap them around too. Wait, so this is like next level surgeon stuff you're talking here? How are you gonna just swap them out like it's Mr. Potato Head? Asked Zack. Will you be quiet? Just don't worry about it, I shot back. So the body and brain finally together? Matt continued his dark work and raised the table. It was only a couple feet up, but he didn't have an actual lab to work with. But he stepped back and waited. Thunder had been promised that night in the forecast, and while the sky was full of clouds, they continued to drift on in peaceful night. Are you kidding me? Matt yelled. I spent all day at the frigging circus stand, dealing with other people's terrible children, subtly soothing a lion in the ass with a pellet pistol, and dug up a midget clown's body for weathering to be wrong. No, you're going to get me the lightning you promised. God damn it! No sooner did he say the words, a bolt of lightning blasted out nowhere. Matt fell on his own ass and quickly got up to put out the small fires around the roof. Heat steamed off his body before him. As slowly the hands started to twitch, a torso began to rise as its eyes opened to stare down at Matt, letting out a moan. Matt nearly jumped out of his skin, seeing the thing before him. It worked! I can't believe it! I mean, it's alive! It's alive! The small frame sawed to the edge of the table with freakishly long Zack legs that stood up. Altogether, it was the size of a normal person, but the combination together looked terribly wrong. Before Matt could react, it stumbled forward and fell off the roof. Damn it! I guess I better go get him. Matt ran back into the house and out of the front door to the shed, but it was already gone. The creature still had Zack's brain and personality, but he was severed, dumbed down. He made it to the edge of Phillips and happened upon a little girl. She was playing with a dolly, and seeing the creature, she walked over and offered her a prized possession. Frankensack wasted no time in talking and booted her into a well. Laughing, he continued on towards Main Street. People saw him emerge from the shadows and began screaming in horror. Frankensack didn't pay it much mind, as he went over to the cake shop. Breaking the display window, he proceeded to devour as many confections as he could. His stomach was much smaller than he remembered though, and educated about half a cake so. Stuffed full by a few pieces, he ran towards the apartment complex that housed a few of the town's local whores. Sasha had just stepped out of the shower that another customer left. She sat on the bed, Not bothering to put any clothes on, he began brushing her long brunette hair. Zack slowly stumbled his way through the door, quietly making his way over to her room. She lifted a mirror to do her makeup and screamed, seeing his horrible, burnt clown face in the mirror. She quickly backed up as she struggled to understand how such a little boy could have such long-ass legs. It was true that Zack was part Sasquatch, but she never had time to put the two together. "Friend," he said, looking over her naked body. His high-pitched voice would be hilarious under normal circumstances. He reached into his back pocket to pull out what cash he had in his wallet and tossed a couple of $100 towards her. Not being one to turn down cash, the two proceeded to get busy. After a while smoking a joint, she began to ask him questions like, "Am I pretty?" and "Are you seeing someone else?" His instincts fired on all cylinders, and he made her leave as fast as possible. She wasn't having it though, and wrapped her arms around him, trying to pull him back. Like a cornered animal, Frank and Zack leashed out, smacking her head to the bed. His tiny hands wrapped around her throat, and as much as she scratched, slapped, and almost threw him off, she finally lay still. "Bad lady," he yelled in his high-pitched tone. He left her dead body there as he took to the streets, heading to the one place that he knew he would be safe. Unfortunately, word around town had spread, and the town people began gathering anything they could find as weapons. They carried torches through the streets. Frank and Zack ran as fast as his freakishly long legs could carry him, which was pretty fast. And finally, up ahead, his heaven came into view. It was the Ball, the local pizza place that Serena used to work at. Not wasting a second, he smashed through the door and struggled to push the tables up against it. The two guys working inside were understandably confused when they saw the thing appear inside the establishment. They went to tell him off, and he began to growl at them. They laughed as his little arms couldn't reach them, and they started pushing him around, back and forth. Frank and Zack gave mighty screams of anger that were to no avail. Matt, knowing his brother, eating habits, went to the Bull as well. The door was unlocked, but he knew he was in there. He also knew that it was about 5 minutes there would be an angry mob there as well, and he needed to hurry. He went around the back, and luckily the service entrance was open. Running through the kitchen, he came upon the sight of two bullies messing with his brother. Anger grew hot in his chest, and Matt threw a can of tomato sauce at one of their heads. Pop! The can exploded in a hot red mess, covering not only the cashier, but also his brother. He dropped on the ground like a stone, and the other man ran to the back. "You okay, bro?" Matt asked. "Zack. Ugly. Zack monster," he said sadly. "It's okay, buddy. Maddie's here," he said, giving him a hug. Suddenly the doors began to bang. Outside they could hear the angry shouts of the mob as they were forced their way in. The tables were pushed from their positions, and the door slowly opened, letting in a stream of people. "There he is! It's the monster! He needs to die!" they all screamed in tandem. They began to make their way forward, knives and other powerful weapons raised, and Matt put himself between them. "He's not a monster! He's my brother! Are you people gonna leave him alone? You're the real monsters here, all of you with your axes and your fire. Zack's a saint compared to you all. The crowd momentarily stopped the pursuit and seemed to reflect upon Smad's words. Just as they thought they were going to drop their weapons and go home, someone screamed, "Kill him anyway!" Out from the crowd came Molotov cocktails. Firing exploded out of them. Matt was trying to pull his brother with him to the back door. With a high-pitched voice he spoke.
"No, brother, go. Leave Zack here."
Matt tried to convince him to come, to talk him out of it, but the fire was raging, and there was no reasoning with him. With a final shove that was hilariously weaker than it should have been, Matt watched on, completed distraught as his only brother disappeared into the flames. "Well, that was a depressing story," said Zack. "Like you didn't even try to get me out of there. You just let me burn." "Yeah, well, that's what you get for playing with wildlife," Uncle Bob replied. The scratching had proceeded up to this point. It was becoming even louder. We looked at each other with confused expressions, and finally the wall behind Bob began opening up. "Oh shit, it's Mr. Bubbles," said Zack. "The ghoul we had trapped in the basement finally found a way to us. Blood already coated its claws and face, and from the sparkling purple witch hat that sat on top of its head, I think I knew why. In a flurry of motion proceeded to disembowel and tear us all apart. Finally, after all this time, he got to feast on our flesh, and when he was satisfied, he smiled and walked back into the hole he dug. "Happy Halloween," he exclaimed as he lay down and entered the most peaceful sleep of his undeath.